There are stories that connect us to ourselves and to each other. These stories reveal who we are and show us the many vivid colors of our truth. Welcome to Soul Wanderings, where we raise spiritual awareness and foster connections through these shared stories and personal experiences. Now, exclusively on KGRA Digital Broadcasting, your hosts, AJ and Natalie.
Hello. Welcome, Wanderers. It is Soul Wanderings night. # Wandering Wednesdays. I am AJ.
I am Natalie.
And we are your hosts of Soul Wanderings, heard here live Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern on KGRADB.com. That's KGRA Digital Broadcasting. So excited to be here for yet another wandering. I always say excited, but I don't have any other word to describe what I feel. It's excitement. It's so good. We are just a couple of shows into our new 1 hour platform, and we did have the station change our time a little bit. So I hope that you're finding us here live. If not, you can always check out the replays on KGRADB.com. You can also use the promo code WANDERER. It's shown at the bottom of the screen. If you are interested in a membership with the station, that helps support the show and the station. And we appreciate all of the support. We are now doing topics.
Yes.
And so our 1 hour show is more in depth into the topic at hand. And it allows us to share more about human design, about spirituality, about the Akashic field. It's just so much goodness for you and your growth journey, your healing journey, your human journey, all of the above. Natalie comes from a background of
human design, all things human. I was going to add to that list. I think even if we were to throw in some psychological or wellness up in our cognition and our cognitive space, consciousness that we talk about as well.
Definitely
what we
It's a plethora of topics that are good for your mind, body, spirit, and heart.
Heart-centered healing. That's what we do.
Heart-centered healing. We're all about it. And then Natalie comes from a background of human design. I come from more of an energetic, spiritual, Akashic background. And together, we just intertwine with goodness. How come I feel so poetic tonight?
It's probably because you can be like that when you weave words together in ways that you don't even realize. Those of us that are hearing you do.
Just here hanging out in this little space.
It's so true.
And happy new moon. It's new moon and partial solar eclipse, the Ring of Fire eclipse.
Oh my
There's
goodness.
a lot of energies going on in the universe, and we are part of that universe. So if you have some old patterns of behavior that you're ready to let go of, now is a really good time for that. So they say. And new moon is all about intentions. It's the night that you set out all of your intentions, get them ready for the new cycle towards the full moon. It's all about manifestations. It's goodness. I love that we're having a show on a new moon, especially with what we're talking about. Go ahead.
The timing, how the timing works out, particular ways.
Isn't it awesome?
Oh, that's cool because maybe we're on this cycle because a couple of weeks ago, it was the full moon that was Tuesday, Wednesday, 2 weeks ago.
Well, it's every couple of weeks, so that tracks.
So true. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I see people coming into the chat rooms. I just wanted to recognize them and thank them for finding us at the new time and being so supportive of the shift and the show by hanging out with us. Hello, hello. Go ahead.
Isn't it something to adjust to changes? You and I adjusting to changes with a little bit different show format,
Mhm.
more with us talking, people adjusting to the changes going on in the world.
Mhm.
I was thinking about when you were talking about new moon energy and the ability to release and let go of, even if you don't believe, experimenting with things. Coming from the human design perspective, it is all about experimenting, and life really is about experimenting. So as you experiment with it and you take up this information, here we are, you talk about the new moon, write down some things literally that you want to let go of. Listeners to the show will know that I often quote experiences that I've had with my clients. And I had this experience with my client the other day, and she had a breakup, a relationship that ended, and she would still see the person that she was in the relationship with. And she just was so angry. She was just so all wound up when she would see him and various other things. And I told her, I said, create a God box. A God box, a spirit box, a universe box. And so this lines up with this new moon. So the new moon, which is dark moon, can be like the interior of a box where we give it over to the box in some sense. But I gave her this concept of a God box. So you take this, whatever it is, and you write it down on a piece of paper. So all of this is purposeful. All of this is done with intention because you intend to at least try to get rid of this stuff that you're carting around with. And she had a framework of Christianity and that kind of thing. And I said, look what the instruction says to let it go, give it over to the greater than you, to God. And within the new moon energy, it's give it over to the new moon, let go of it, purposefully let go. So this concept of a God box or the spirit box or the new moon says, guess what? You don't have to carry that burden. You
Mhm.
literally can be released of that. You don't have to do that, but you do have to do some action and go through an action oriented thing that said, I'm going to let this go,
Mhm.
and literally physically write it down. Let it go.
Yeah.
Forget about it.
It really is that simple. You can write something down and just the power of the action and the letting go process, poof, taken care of. It's really
Yes.
quite something, isn't it?
Yes. Have you practiced that, haven't you?
I am more about the new moon than I am about the full moon. And I'm not even sure if the moon is real, but that's a whole other topic. But I like the idea of it, and I definitely believe that there's something out there, even if it's not the moon, that affects our energies in the ways that they say the moon does. Um just the ebbs and flows, and the ups and downs, and all of the things that the different phases of the moons offer us is a good way to put it. It's not all great, as in it's sometimes very painful, but it also can be really beautiful. And that's what I love about the new moon, because it's like you have this clean slate, like you let go of everything over the full moon process, and now you have this uh new new notebook and you get to write down all of the things that you're ready to manifest, and the intentions that you have to be able to release on the full moon. And so during those couple of weeks, like reading them every day and being very mindful of what you're wanting to manifest and bring into your life is a beautiful practice. I enjoy that very much. And so that's what I practice mostly. That's what feels good to me. But there is also something really beautiful about full moon energy where you're like really letting it go and giving to God or creator, just taking all of that stuff that you wrote down and sending it into the universe and knowing that what you'll get back is for your best and highest good. Regardless if it's like word for word what you wanted, it's always the best thing for you. And plus, there's something really magical about a fire on a new moon. So if you're into that and throwing your papers into the fire and releasing that way, it's a really nice ceremonial thing you can do for yourself.
So just to be, even I'm listening and saying, so we let go on the new moon, or we bring towards us on the new moon?
New
So we're
moon is
letting
all
go and-
about intentions and manifestations.
Okay.
Full moon is all about the release. Like you're giving it, you're letting go.
As I went on and was talking about the God box, I realized as you were talking, oh, wait, we're bringing, what do we want to bring to us?
Yes. But everything is about intention. And although there are these like unspoken rules or even like rules that others put on you, we'll be talking about that. I really think that everything is intentional. So if you feel like letting go on new moon, then do your own thing. I don't think spirituality should have rules other than just stay in your own lane. Don't harm other people. Do good to the earth and the universe, right? So those things that we don't really need to put out there. It's just a given, I would hope. But I think it's really neat that religion has the rules. Religion says it needs to look and be a certain way. Spirituality is your own individual journey. And so on the new moon, do you want to release? Do you want to let go on the new moon? Then do it. Do what feels good for you. And don't worry about what everyone says it should look like.
It's beautiful. That's
I think so.
Definitely what we talk about when we're talking about the differentiation that any of us individuals have that comes from understanding your own personal design and stepping into that space where you have an idea of your form and function and what is your nature and what isn't your nature. And this is the aspects, even with the understanding the nature, the way the nature of energy is moving.
Right. Everything is energy. It ebbs and flows, and nothing ever stays the same. It's different than it was 5 minutes ago when we were talking about this in the beginning. So that's what's so neat. We take this whole thing just way too seriously. Right? All of it is just too serious. At Vibes, Mind, Body, Spirit, which you can check out at vibesnow.com. That's the shop that Natalie and I operate and hang out in during the day. And we have I would say a majority of people coming in, and they always say, these certain people will say, so-and-so told me I need to get this rock, this rock, this rock, and I need to lay it here, here, and here. Then I need to spin around this way and go that way and 3 steps for it. And I'm just like, that sounds terrifying. Don't do that unless it feels good to you. Unless you were like, yes, that resonates with me. I'm going to try that. Everything literally can be any way that you want it to be. And it's a repeat thing I say to our customers. Yeah. Well, how does that feel for you? Does that feel good for you? Is that what you want? Do what feels good for you. I mean, if you're getting into spells or magic of any kind, witchcraft of any kind, of course, there's like protocols. There's ways to do things for certain outcomes because they've been tested and proven, right? Especially
That's
with
correct.
spell work. But also behind spell work even comes intention. So it's even your intention that's part of the energy of the spell. It's just, what do you want it to be? What do you want it to look like? Do that.
That's a lot of freedom. That's a lot of responsibility.
It is a lot of responsibility. And we forget our own power. So if we are not standing in that space where we're allowed to have the experience of the responsibility, how do we know how great we are, how powerful we are? If we don't just give ourselves a little more freedom into being ourselves and trusting our own intuition.
It's so true.
So good. So the topic at hand tonight, because we're doing topics now, is all about the mind and also the not self. Two different topics, but they go together. And the terminology, the mind and the not self, is based in the human design system. And also where Natalie comes from, human design system, I come from the energetic spiritual side. So we just have this organic conversation that takes place, and you get to be here to witness. If you want to join in, you can hang out with us on any of the platforms that we are at under KGRA Digital Broadcasting. We're hanging out on Facebook, on Rumble, Twitch, X, and also we have a new YouTube channel at Soul Wanderings. So wherever you guys want to hang out with us. Oh, and don't forget the live.kgradb.com. Wherever you're hanging out with us, if you have anything to ask, you have any insight to the conversation, please do share. Don't be shy. Even if it's a replay, we go back and read comments. So tune in, chime in.
Talk with us.
Yeah, tonight the mind and the not self. So let's begin with the mind, because it's first in the title, and that's the only reason I say the mind. The passenger. Natalie,
Passenger.
I'll let you go into this because you are the human design, and I just feel as you speak. But I do have a, I believe that you've referenced the mind as the passenger before in past classes, and that resonated with me so much because of passenger consciousness. And we're told how powerful our mind is all of the time. And I agree with that statement in some ways, right? For some reasons. But there's intellect and there's intelligence. And so I'm going to have you take it from there.
So the mind, when we step into spirituality, consciousness, and understanding the human design, there's physicality, which is the body, there's the brain, and the brain operates its own particular way. But when you study consciousness, you understand that there's something beyond just brain, neurons and neural pathways. There's this mind, which is not a physical thing. It's an essence, or what the mind is. When we get into talking about it with human design, there's two different aspects within the framework of human design. One's the personality. It's who we think we are. So the thinking part is the mind part. It's the mind that thinks that it is it. And within the framework of human design, and a lot of spiritual yoga and yogis teachings and spiritual teachings talk about this difference between the mind and the body, and understanding and navigating that. So the mind is who we think we are. It means it's the part that we're conscious of. And by conscious, I mean own awareness, and the characteristics that you would identify yourself with, those types of things. Those are the mind aspect. And the mind in this modern world is trained to be the decision maker. And the mind actually is not a very good decision maker. And there's lots of books out there on it. I remember this one, I have not read the book, but reference to a Blink that said, essentially, people will go along and they'll analyze and evaluate and pros and cons list and think about it. And then they'll make a split decision in the blink of an eye. So this is the way decision making goes with the mind. So the mind truly, and this is what I've seen within my own work and the study of design and the application of human design with all my different clients and all the different design aspects that they have, Nobody's inner authority is the design, and or is in the mind. And we did talk about that in the other show, but we're going to say the same thing several times because that's the essence of talking about a science, is that the mind is not a very good decision maker. The mind is an analytical machine. It is beautiful for what it's good for. It's good for taking in and analyzing and evaluating and artistic expression, and it has logical aspects and abstract aspects and thinking about concepts and forming those things. That's what the mind does. When we use it for decision making, we get pulled towards things that is not necessarily our nature, pulled away from the framework that's consistent and steady within us. The mind thinks about a lot of things that don't matter. A lot.
Mm-hmm.
People, so often I've heard, and there's a lot of conversation in the greater World at Large podcast galore. We've talked about it on the show about how your mind will keep you up at night. Why does it keep you up at night?
Oh,
Keeps you up
man.
at night. Yeah, what is it? So when your mind keeps you up at night, what's it doing?
My mind actually doesn't keep me up at night, but I remember times of my life where it absolutely did, and it drove me insane. It created scenarios and stories and all kinds of things that were just not real. Caused me a lot of pain.
Right. Just not so.
Now I'm like,
And
mind, take a back seat. I don't have time for this. I literally have to do that.
And that's what we talk about when we talk about disciplining the mind and putting the mind in its proper place of saying, you can just go over and calculate and think about that and cogitate on a particular concept, but we're not bringing it to some sort of resolution, not trying to solve the world's problems. And the mind is actually very good at making up stories. So you just pose this to the listeners and to you and I that said, okay, so how many how do I want to put that? Like words. That when it runs a scenario, there's so many times people will tell me, well, I run down this scenario and that scenario and well, what if this happens? And what I could have or would have, should have done. And I could have said this, or what if I have a conversation? I remember one time when I was doing my meditation retreat, and I had so many conversations with people in my life in that retreat.
Right,
None
that
of
weren't
them,
even there.
yeah, none of them ever happened. My profound realization, oh my gosh, this is all in my mind. It's not reality.
Right.
It's also where anxiety, mental anxiety comes from, trying to figure out what's going to happen, where things are going to go, how it's going to work out.
Yeah.
And we can't come to any realizations or conclusions in our mental sphere that stick, because it's really changing and shifting, and the now to the now to the now. So that's a little bit of a rundown on the mind.
Okay. I love it. The more I learn about it, the more fascinated I am. The mind has been studied for all time, right? Everyone has wanted to understand what goes on up in here. I would like to know that for myself, just for myself. Sometimes I'm like, why did you do that? So I'll tell you, when I was tuning in just before the show on the mind, I wrote this down, so I have a few notes so I don't forget, because I get so caught up in here now listening and talking with you that going back to remember. So a good example of what I got is a good example of like tonal structures. So you have like a structure, if you will, right? And inside this structure, there's sound, and there is a frequency there in the sound, and when we no longer allow room for the meddling, like the busy mind, the noisy mind to run the show, which holds on to the limitations. That's what happens when we connect this deep frequency. This sound is specifically designed for us, and it also has this connection that we can have for our highest good and our highest consciousness. And so in order to have like this frequency, this beautiful sound, we have the unconditioning that gets to happen, and the healing that actually comes through your body and not through your mind.
Oh my goodness, that is so lined up with the concepts of the design system. And it's because the design system is so big, 3-4 year degrees to talk about it. And it talks about the crystals. So we have crystals in it, and there's the personality crystal, and it sits literally.
I totally forgot about the consciousness crystal. I just
Right.
almost spit my coffee. I'm like, oh my gosh, the frequency. Holy cow. So see, I love when this happens. Like just before the show, I'm getting like this frequency vibration like in my chest. And I'm like literally just gathering this energy and just holding on to it. And like, what is it trying to tell me? And that's what I get from it. And then I interrupted, but I got really excited.
Oh, what's beautiful about this is that it shows itself in all these ways. Now, I've listened to hours and hours and hours of lectures so that I could get some concept, so something that comes out of my mouth will make sense. But I have discovered that I need to absorb. I've been absorbing the science of the human design system and then living it, and then shifting my own personal frequency so I eliminate those things that aren't me. And that's what we're talking about with the that's what we're talking about with the not self. The not self are the aspects that you have taken on throughout your whole entire life, through conditioning, through the energetic exchange that happens automatically without the mind understanding any of the energetic exchanges that we go through. We don't know that, not until you do some sort of practice, then become more sensitive to to your own energies, to someone else's, and start sorting through that through whatever modalities or whatever practices that you've personally been doing. And then you start to resonate or to vibrate in your own frequency, which comes from the definition that's within your body graph. And there are tones within the human design. So there's specific tonal architecture. And that's exactly what you talked about.
Just I didn't even learn that yet.
I know you haven't.
I love
it. I'm like, oh my God, so good. The information is all out there in our energy field. The consciousness, it permeates all of us. We swim in this neutrino field. It's what programs us. The information is all out there. So as you start to tune in to what your own nature is, you become more narrow as far as in the frequency that you ride around, which is your definition. I know this is a lot of language. If you keep tuning in, it'll start to feel more familiar, because you and I, we've been talking this for a while, and it gets more familiar and more familiar. So that's exactly what you were talking about. Now, layman's term, what does that mean? In a little bit of layman's terms, because it's actually quite simple, the design, and grandly complex, but so is a grain of sand, actually. A grain of sand is really simple. You can visualize it, but if you put it under a microscope, you're shocked at the landscape that comes up on a little grain of sand. So it's like this on all levels. Fortunately, the universe is really gentle, honestly, with us. The universe wants the best experience that the universe can have. So it says, look, there's some simplicity and complexity, but there's simple ways to line yourself up behind your own frequency. Now, understanding what is your own personal definition, it's important for you, if this resonates with you, to pull your body graph, get your birth info, run the body graph so that you can start to understand that there's areas that are defined in you, that's consistent and reliable. And then tonight we're talking about the areas that are not defined in you. So the layman's example that I was going to bring up, that I was reading this somewhere in my readings, that said, if you're holding a cup
Somewhere
of
along the
coffee
way.
and someone bumps into you and you spill the coffee, why do you spill the coffee? Why does the coffee spill?
Force. You got
Someone
bumped.
bumps. Right.
Athletic force.
So this went on to say, no, it spilled because there was coffee in your cup. So if you take the analogy of a cup of coffee and you put it to yourself, when the universe bumps you, what comes out of you is like the coffee comes out of the cup, because what's inside of us comes out.
So
As
make
you
sure your
start-
insides are just as clean as your outsides.
Yes. And that's done with quite a profound level of precision when you understand that we have taken in energies throughout our whole life that weren't ours, because there's this energy exchange that happens all the time when we're around another person. Even animals and mammals have that. There's still an exchange system, and we take it in, it moves through our auric field. And if we don't know how to understand what's us and what isn't us, then we consider that to be us. We become overly attached to that aspect, and then we take that conditioning in and own it. And it becomes these aspects of what's called the not self. So the not self comes from the areas that are within your body graph that are not defined in you. So it can come from the planetary energies, from other people, but your native, your natural body, so your body, your mind, your heart, all your spirit, all of those things, it's consistent with you for all your life. What you're born with, as far as the body graph and the design goes, that stays there the whole life. And what is not defined in you is always open for your whole life. So these parts of the system, once you learn and educate about them, they're consistent and reliable. Even the part of your nature that is undefined, that you're taking other people's energy in through your aura field.
Are you
Yeah.
waiting to see if I respond?
Yeah.
I'm just sitting here feeling it. I'm like, I like to look at the not self as an indication that you are not living in alignment.
Yes.
Although there are times, because my not self theme is anger as a manifester, there are times where you're like, but that actually isn't always the bad thing for you. Like, you can actually be angry and get away with it because you're a manifester.
It's true. So there are 4 different aura types, and the not self theme for the 4 different types is different for each one of them. So the largest group are generators. About 70% of the planet are generators. And manifesting generators goes into that group. Their not self theme is frustration. So frankly, we live on a world that runs with a lot of frustration.
Mm-hmm.
Most people on this planet don't live out their truest form, resonate in their highest frequency, live according to their design. They're just surviving, or not surviving. And then, for those of us that are in where we have more, we're not just in survival mode. So we may be going to work and all those different things, but we're not being able to just be in our truest self, given the structure that we live in. So within that structure, a lot of frustration that goes on. And then there is, of course, as you mentioned, the manifestors, anger, projectors have bitterness, and reflectors have disappointment. So just those words are an indication for when you discover what your first year type is, it'll be what they call a signpost. Easy to recognize aspect of your life that will then say, whoa, take notice. You are caught up in ways that isn't your true nature. You're out of alignment, as you said, not in alignment. Yes. So I want to, do you want me to go over the different aspects and not self voices? Do you want me to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I just have to say, I'm distracted by my light. I have no lights on in my house, in this room, except for my room light on the ceiling. And it's very suspicious right now. It's a little distracting because I can feel like it's not electrical. Okay. Yeah, so I think that you sharing the different types of not self themes is helpful if someone knows their chart. So direct them on how they can get their chart if they're listening live or on a replay so that they can learn. And the chart is free, friends. You don't have to pay anything. You don't get on anyone's mailing list. You just pull your chart. And so they can do that by going to what sites?
So they can go to jovianarchive.com or humandesignamerica.com.
Yeah.
Those are two sites where they can pull their free chart.
Right. And if you pull your charts, you can just have them handy for the nights that we really get into human design. But every week we'll have some aspect of that just because we feel it's such an important tool for our human experience. Oh, yes.
It's so true, especially for these next few years.
I had to write this so Chanel, our producer, is awesome. jovianarchive.com, right?
Correct.
Okay, so she's going to get that on a banner so you guys can just look and see how it goes. And for those of you who are listening and not watching, it's JOVIAN archive.com. So go ahead and grab your charts. Just have them handy when you hang out with us because we do talk about human design quite a bit. We do have time, so maybe quickly go over what you can with each type.
Well, I'll run some basic, so first and foremost, I want to say that the mind is the spokesperson for the not self. We consider those words. What it's saying is that there's 9 different centers within the body graph, and those 9 centers are distributed throughout your body and your aura field. So our energy fields are actually not just our skin. Our energy fields go well beyond our skin. Some say, like, if you hold out your arms, it's at least that, sometimes bigger, depends on how well you're vibrating and your type of your aura as well. So within that energy field, there's different parts within that. So if you just line it up with your body, there's going to be different places in your body where an energy center is going to be located, similar to the chakras system, where they run up and down your body. So these 9 centers are similar, built from that, but expanded from that, because that typically 7 chakras and it's 9 energy centers. So we're called a 9-centered being. And that's an evolution from what our humans used to be in the 1700s and earlier. So before that, we go through these evolutionary changes may not, so that through our evolution over these eons that humans have been around, we've evolved and evolved and evolved and evolved. So we're definitely not the same as our ancestors were. And that's scientifically proven and makes sense. I think that it's your beautiful lights. Your lights are just, this is how the energy is flowing.
Yeah, it's
This is what
interesting.
happens when we tune in energetically and spiritually.
Hmm.
Be ready for all the changes.
Yeah, I don't think it's a energy being. I just think it's energy. Something obviously technical is going on somewhere.
Yeah, that makes sense. I have my own in and out lighting that I'm working with on my
It's a process, you guys. We've been pampered, okay?
we
Coming
definitely
home, we've
have
had
been.
to really learn a lot.
So true. Work with our equipment and then rework with it and work with it. Helps us appreciate our producer
Yes, she's
very much.
amazing. Mhm.
Okay, so with the not self and the mind and understanding that the mind is the spokesperson for the not self, it's up in our mental sphere that we're going to have this voice. That's generally where people would hear the voices in their heads. If you get familiar with your body graph, there will be centers that are defined and centers that are not defined. It goes from any range up to no definition to maybe a couple of centers that are defined. That leaves 8 or 7 centers that are undefined, which means that you could have 7 not self voices going on in your head, all the way to where people have 9 centers defined. So it definitely is widely varied because this is so different depending on the individual person. So if we're talking from the top, we will often in our mind think about a lot of things that don't matter to us on our own personal journey. We think about most people on this planet have an open, undefined head center. So we think about a lot of things that don't matter to us. And that
Mhm.
pulls us this way and that way. And it really, in the end, it's that we are working to answer questions that don't really belong to us. They don't have any true play in our personal life. It's also
Mhm.
where I feel people get caught up in worrying about other people. Worrying. It's like, well, what if they this and those are all things that don't matter to you in your personal life. Then we also, the next center down is called the Ajna center, and that center, the not self voice for that one sounds like, I am trying to be certain. So not everybody has a level or a natural certainty that occurs in them. So there's many people that will reach out for certainty because they feel like that's important to have and they ought to
Mhm.
have it. So these are the different aspects that push us into what we're not, because we think
Mhm.
what we see outside of ourselves is more reliable than what's inside of us.
I'm just showing the
Yes.
rave chart so that they're familiar with what it looks like when they go to see it and they're like, "Wait, what?" Well,
Yeah.
there it
There you
goes.
go.
You can tell my head's undefined because it's all white.
Hmm.
But that's what we're looking at.
Yeah, I'll have to maybe I'll have to get some graphics so Chanel can show some graphics on the screen when we're talking about various things. So we'll think about things that don't matter. We'll have people that will work to be certain when they're not designed for certainty. There'll be
Mhm.
people throughout their throat center that will be under pressure to communicate and talk for attention. And there's a heart center. People with undefined hearts will will spend their life um, trying to prove themselves, trying to be accomplished so that they'll feel worthy. Within the undefined identity center or the G center, they'll try to fix their identity because they have a fluid identity. So they would try to fix their identity. And also the not self voice will say, am I lovable? I'm not, I need to go somewhere. I need to get direction. I'm not sure that I am lovable. Those things are examples of the not self of that particular center. The spleen which is the seat of well-being, if a person has an undefined spleen, they don't have their own internal sense of well-being that's reliable. So they'll reach outside of themselves for well-being, and it can be found in a person with a defined spleen. And so they'll want to hold on to things that are not good for them for far too long because they don't have their own internal sense of well-being. And then there's the root center, which is a pressure center, and it has adrenalized stress energy in that particular center. So people with an undefined root center will want to do things quickly to eliminate that stress from people that are around them, or what they will overly identify stress as something that they are having, which belongs to someone else. And the solar plexus, which we often talk a lot about, the emotional or the solar plexus center, and people that don't have definition, that are non-emotionally defined, can be way over the top emotional, or they'll avoid conversations that may kick up an emotional energy in someone. So they will have a tendency to avoid conflicts or truth and speaking that. And then the last center that I haven't mentioned is the sacral center. And that is, since 70% of the global population are generators, those 70% have a sacral center defined. So it's the 30% of the global population that has a not self, which means they don't have definition in that sacral. And for those people, they won't know when enough is enough. They don't know how. They don't have an automatic shut off.
For the undefined.
It won't know when enough is enough, and that'll happen in a lot of ways, which really makes non-energy types become a sort of super slave. Super slave.
She's talking to me. We're unwinding that currently, just so you all know.
That and the other manifester that I know, when I tease him and I'm like, it's all right, it's okay, go ahead and be a super slave. I say with love. Right. For the non-energy types, because I really feel for non-energy types, they get pulled in a lot of ways that are unhealthy because of that one particular center.
Yeah.
So the not self, the way that we get conditioned by the world around us, without awareness, you have no idea that there's ways that we're acting and goals that we're chasing and ways that we think we ought to be that are all driven by our desire to be what we're not. We're designed genetically through the eons that this our species have been alive. We're genetically designed to be attracted to what we're not, so that the gene pool gets diverse. And because if you make babies with someone that's not diverse enough, we all know what happens. There's a reason why we don't do that. So this is on the genetic level. We get attracted to what we're not. And so this is, so it's so important that but we don't really realize that until you come to language like this. And then it's like, oh, I think that I want to be like that person, or I feel like I need to be something that I don't have. And so there are people that will go to therapy for lots and lots of years, not dissing therapy at all. But there'll be these times where going through therapy and you're working to solve a problem that you picked up in the areas through conditioning from someone else that's not even your problem. So no wonder you can't get to on the other side of that therapeutically.
Yeah.
Because and it's not even your problem.
Right. And we're so good at beating ourselves up, right?
Correct.
We just are, just naturally. We just have a few minutes. I just wanted to pitch in on what you've said and go like a more simpler route. Yours is all scientific and fancy. And I'm like, but I'm just a human. Just very beginning of this stuff. So, okay. But like, it's like kind of what I said in the beginning of the conversation of the not self, like you're not in alignment with yourself. I feel like you feel it in your body, right? So when you start having your non-self theme, and I think the minute that you recognize it and you've stepped into that not self theme, it's and you're like, hey, I'm not being myself. I'm kind of being angry or frustrated or bitter. It's really easy for you to recognize too, because you'll stop making the right decisions for you, or you'll have the wrong actions, or just, you're out of alignment. You fell off, and the only thing you should focus on in that time is getting back into alignment. I notice, because my non-self theme is anger. Once I start feeling angry, I literally have to say, okay, AJ, time out. I leave the room, end the conversation. I'll come back to this conversation later. Please excuse me. Something along those lines, where I can step away from whatever is causing me to become my non-self and really check in. And I think it's important when you do that, because you do feel it in your body when you're in alignment and when you're not in alignment. And it doesn't have to be like this super high vibrational thing, right? We can just
No.
literally just think about what's going on and bring the attention to it. And just by bringing the attention to it, you can then operate from a place without the anger, without the bitterness, without the frustration, without the disappointment, or whatever non-self theme that you have. And you can also use your not self theme to your advantage, like we said earlier. But I think it's important just to recognize and to feel it in your body and check in with yourself on a regular basis when you're like, I don't feel like myself. And those are simple. It's just simple. It really is. If you're having a bad day, why are you having a bad day? Is your mind in the way? Is your not self in the way? Are these passengers trying to drive the vehicle? Or are you? Who's driving? That's what I want to know.
Are you upset that you're just in the ocean and you can't drive?
How did you end up there? Did you make a bad decision? Were you angry? Were you disappointed?
Were you emotional?
That bitterness will get you. It's just amazing, like having these tools of human design to really learn how to bring yourself back into alignment and into your center, and really work with your mind and not have it work against you. Really work with your not self version and bring it into alignment. Just having the tools and the awareness, beautiful thing. Thank you for sharing everything that you shared tonight, Natalie.
You are so welcome.
I love human design and I love spiritual awareness. It's beautiful. And I believe next week we're going to talk. Yes, I'm in a haunted studio. That's true. Next week, we are going to be talking about galactic stuff.
I'm excited that will be fun. That.
I hope you guys all join us next week here on KGRA Digital Broadcasting at 7 p.m. Eastern, Wednesday nights. And we'll see you all then. Good night, everyone.
Have a good one.
I'm going to go.